gym. The whole gym.
Like
70 kids
bravado?
without a gun. Like, yo, everybody give me your coats, give me your Walkmans. I couldn't even carry it. Some of the guys I robbed had to help me carry the stuff with them.
Long ago, Fat Joe came out and said he lied in 95% of his rhymes. What did you think of that?
He told the truth for the first time, that he's a liar. That you can't believe nothing that comes out of his mouth. He's a liar.
One thing about Fat Joe, the man can tell a story. In fact, it's one of the main reasons he's been such a fixture in hip-hop culture for decades.
Didn't you call Fat Joe hip-hop's biggest liar?
100%.
How's that?
Fat Joe's always lying.
The way he paints a picture, the way he throws in the little details, the energy he brings, you feel like you were sitting right there next to him when it all went down.
I once robbed my whole gym. The whole gym.
Like
70 kids
bravado?
without a gun. Like, yo, everybody give me your coats, give me your Walkmans.
But here's the thing, over the years, more and more people have started wondering if some of those so-called iconic stories aren't really stories at all, but straight up fabrications.
I couldn't even carry it. Some of the guys I robbed had to help me carry the stuff with them.
In the industry, there's even a nickname for it.
He said he robbed a whole gym. A Bronx school gym. The Bronx.
Then the number itself, 70 students?
Some call him a Tino, short for, that is not okay, because every time he drops one of those wild tales, somebody's there to say, nah, that ain't it.
But these might just be exaggerations. Because I'm pretty sure he probably robbed maybe one or two. Because I knew dudes that I went to school with like that. But 70? Come on. Come on, man.
And the thing is, it's not just random internet haters saying it.
And they asked me the question, yo, Joe, what you think about Tupac and all that? I said, yo, he's cool, but, you know, if they step to me, it's gonna be Tupac's locked up upstate in New York. The Puerto Ricans hear that, and they're, Papi, Tupac got beef with Fat Joe.
We're talking people in the game, artists, content creators, and insiders, calling him out for stretching the truth past the breaking point.
I get a phone call from Greg Nice, who pretty much put me in the game, one of my brothers. He said, yo, Joe, I got Pac on the other line. I was like, Pac?
Sure, no one's denying Fat Joe is entertaining. He's got charisma for days, and fans love seeing him in full storytelling mode.
Tupac was like, yo, these Puerto Ricans is on me. Like, you said something in the radio. I don't got a problem with you, Joe. Like this, I know what's up, this. And so, you know, we sent the kite out to the Puerto Ricans and be like, nah.
But there's a fine line between legendary street tale and there's no way in hell that actually happened. And according to many, Joe's been crossing that line more than once. Take one of his most infamous and downright ridiculous claims, the gym heist.
I know he got strength with Puerto Ricans, his people. But as far as Tupac being in prison, having to call Joe to keep the Puerto Ricans off his back because they think that he got beef with Joe in the street or some, I don't know about that.
Joe swears that back in high school, he robbed his entire gym class. Not a couple of kids, not a small group, but the whole class. He even put a number on it, 70 students. And here's the kicker, he insists he did it without a weapon.
A lot of people who run the prisons in the New York State penal system are people that we know. They people that love us. They family members, man.
Just walked into the gym, mean mugged a bunch of teenagers, and somehow had every single one of them handing over their sneakers, jewelry, and cash. But wait, it gets even crazier.
Tupac wasn't in a prison where people was going to walk all over him. That wasn't going to be the situation. He was in prison with people who were strong.
According to Joe, he stole so much stuff that he physically couldn't carry it all. So what happened next?
When he first got into Clinton, there were people already with care packages for him. Like strong people that is telling Pac, if you got problems, let me know. I'm gonna make sure that the CEOs know blah, 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 and this and that. And Pac telling them, nah, that's all right, I don't need none of you guys to help me with nothing.
Well, if you believe his version, some of the same people he just robbed actually helped him carry the loot out of the building. That's the moment where most people tap the brakes.
Officers, knowing Pac's connection with some of the strongest people in Clinton, taking him out of population and putting him in segregation so that he don't incite anything. Does that make sense to you? That some Puerto Ricans is gonna put pressure on him so that Pac can call Joe, of all people?
And that's just one of the times Fat Joe got caught exaggerating.
Like, really? 70 kids in a Bronx gym and not one teacher, security guard, or coach noticed. Nobody fought back.
She had hundreds of thousands of dollars. I thought I did the right thing. She spent the money unwisely, right? She comes back and says, Joe, I'm doing bad again. We give her a check out of our pockets. We say, yo, we gotta take care.
They all just stood there like extras in a movie, watching him clean house. Content creator Will Mills broke it down perfectly in a viral post. He said, look, maybe Joe did jack a couple kids back in the day. That's believable. 1 or 2 kids. Sure. But 70? By himself? And then the victims helping him carry the stolen goods? Nah. That's where the whole story falls apart.
It was all over the radio basically saying, I gave her $750,000, I gave her $250,000, I told her enough's enough. Everybody bought it and believed it. It was all lies and mediation. We had him admit that he never gave her a dollar in his life.
Oh, so he didn't give her
Nothing, not a dollar in his life he never gave her, period.
And that's not the only eyebrow-raising tale Fat Joe's put out there. He's got a whole catalog of questionable stories, including one about Tupac that's been debated for years. Back in 1995, Joe was on the radio talking about the infamous East Coast versus West Coast beef, dropping names and adding spice to the narrative.
According to Liza, after he passed away, Joe was telling her that, oh no, he owed me money. You know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden, a bunch of fake royalty statements started to come biannually.
According to him, what he said during that broadcast stirred up tension with Puerto Rican inmates who were supposedly loyal to IPAC. But what really went down that day, and whether Joe's memory lines up with reality, is still a question a lot of people have.
About 14 years, from about 2000 to 2014, fake royalty statements was coming out.
2000 to 2014?
Yeah. Joe used Jelly Bean Benitez as a publisher. Jelly Bean Benitez was Madonna's ex-boyfriend from the early 80s. He produced a bunch of Madonna records back in the early 80s. He remixed, he DJs now.
And once you start pulling at the thread of one unbelievable story, the rest of his legendary tales start looking a little shaky too. According to Fat Joe, Tupac himself somehow got wind of the so-called Puerto Rican inmate problem and personally picked up the phone from prison to call him for help. Joe says Pac told him straight up that there was a certain inmate giving him trouble and that he wanted Joe to step in. In Joe's telling, the two chopped it up, cleared the air, and by the end of the conversation, there was no animosity. He even claims he sent word to his guy, Charlie Rock LD, to hold Pac down on the inside. Sounds powerful, right? Like some real boss-level connections at work. But here's the problem, people close to Tupac are calling complete nonsense on that entire story. Tupac's own cousin, William Lassane, recently set the record straight in an interview, and he didn't mince words. Yes, he admitted Fat Joe had influence with certain Puerto Rican circles, but the idea that Tupac, of all people, needed Joe's protection? According to Lassane, that's just not how things went down.
Once I got the royalty statements, the same stuff that they had, it probably took me like a minute and a half to see the deception. I called her up, told her I paid for the case, paid for the auditor, took him to court.
He explained that when Pac landed in the New York State prison system, he was already in a position of respect. The people who ran that facility weren't out to get him, they actually admired him. And in terms of muscle, Pac had it in spades. From day one, strong and connected individuals had his back. Lassane even said there were people literally waiting for him with care packages, ready to make sure he had everything he needed.
We were trying to do a big pun movie and stuff like that, right? And basically, we were like, hey, let's get Joe involved. You know what I'm saying? Because it's gonna be bigger with Joe. If you do it without Joe, Joe can get all these other people involved. But he was basically saying like, well, if you go on Instagram or if you go out there and tell publicly that I never stole from you, then I'll work with you. Otherwise, I'm not working with you. She's like, why would I do that? You stole from me.
Pac didn't have to ask for help, and in fact, he often turned it down. Hussein Fatal backed this up years ago, pointing out that the only reason Pac was taken out of general population and placed in segregation wasn't for his safety from inmates, it was because prison officials didn't want any incidents involving such a high-profile figure.
He was in mediation. He basically he said that he never gave her $1, zero. So the $750 he was talking about, he lied. The $250 he's talking about, he lied. As you see now, people are starting to see that he lies a lot, but I don't understand why nobody reprimands him.
In other words, the image of Pac desperately calling Fat Joe for backup doesn't add up at all. And that's just one time Joe's been accused of bending reality. Another one of his so-called truths that's been completely picked apart involves the late, great Big Pun.
He made a bunch of songs, you know what I'm saying? But they was like really disrespectful and hateful, and so he died and Tupac died.
And how many songs did you guys do?
I don't know, but a couple, not maybe 8 songs, 10 songs, you know, like that.
For years, Fat Joe has painted himself as the loyal friend who took care of Pun Hess' widow and family after his passing.
You know, I say stuff, Tim, and they always say I lie or I say too much. You know, I worked on an album with Biggie. We cut about 5 songs together.
He's gone on record saying he gave her money, tried to set her up with business opportunities, and made sure she was financially secure. But according to Gangu, Roach, a music industry figure who specializes in helping artists and their families recover lost royalties and publishing money, that's not what happened.
Fat Joe, and he said that him and Biggie was working on an album together, and he said that they had a whole lot of Tupac disses on the album. How you feel about him saying that?
I don't think so. I'm sure I was around for a lot of stuff, and I didn't hear none of that at all.
In fact, Gangu says the truth is the exact opposite. Gangu revealed that Fat Joe was actually taken to court by Big Pun-es widow after it came to light that Joe had allegedly been skimming Pun-es royalties for 14 years. 14. Not only that, but Gangu says Joe was allegedly generating fake royalty statements with the help of Jelly Bean Benitez.
Hey, yo, tell them what you want from them so they could do it in the studio. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they could do it. You know, because you say you wanted some Spanish shit. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, Pun and Joe, you know, was there. And Pun looked at me. I was the rookie at the time, real rookie. Like, oh, shit, y'all want me to do this? So they both put me to do it. Okay? So me and Pun went. So then after me and Pun went and did our stuff. Biggie was like, yeah, he was hyped up. Then Joe went in there and he put his spice on top on a separate track by himself.
And sending these falsified documents to Pun-es widow to make it look like there wasn't too much money coming in. Pun's wife had already gone through multiple lawyers trying to get justice, but no one got results until Gangu stepped in. Once he dug into the paperwork and followed the money, the alleged scheme started unraveling fast.
That little snippet right there to sell the fact that he did an album with Biggie. Incredible liar. Disgusting.
They took Fat Joe to court, exposed what was really going on, and forced the truth out into the open. But here's the wild part, even after all of this, Joe continued to go on interviews swearing there was never even a court case. Like he thought the receipts didn't exist.
I took this made sure that they played it. They wasn't never gonna play it. 6 months later, he was rich. Pitbull, I took his demo and got him signed. Trick Daddy, I took his and got him signed.
Gangu said he was blown away by how easily people just believed Joe's version without looking into the facts. And the lies didn't stop there. Gangu dropped another bombshell when a Big Pun biopic was in development.
I know you discovered Trick. I know you discovered Pitbull. I never said I discovered them. Nope. I took his demo out of love for hip-hop.
The producers actually wanted Fat Joe involved, thinking he could use his industry clout to get the project made and bring attention to Pun-es legacy. But according to Gangu, what Joe did next spoke volumes about where his loyalty really stood.
The Dawn has never been a rat in his life, has never told on a person in his life. I kill myself before I tell on somebody. Today's about love or hate. Now, meaning, We call people haters.
But according to Gangu, Joe's behavior during the Big Pun movie talks took things from shady to downright manipulative. He claims Joe allegedly told Pun's widow he would only help push the film if she went public and cleared his name, meaning she'd have to tell the world he never stole from her. Of course, she refused, because in her eyes, and according to Gangu's evidence, he did steal from her. That's when the gloves came off. By this point, Fat Joe wasn't just being painted as a storyteller who liked to stretch the truth, he was now being openly labeled a liar and a thief. Yet somehow, despite the mounting receipts, there are still people in the hip-hop community who eat up his stories like they're gospel. And Joe's tales don't just stay in the Big Pun lane, he's told questionable stories involving some of the biggest names in rap history. Case in point, his bold claim about the notorious B.I.G. In 2023, Fat Joe sat down with Cam Capone News and decided to drop what he clearly thought would be a blockbuster revelation. According to Joe, way back in the day, he and Biggie had actually recorded an entire album together, not just a few tracks, but a full project of 8 to 10 songs. He says the only reason nobody has ever heard it is because the music was too disrespectful. Allegedly packed with scathing disses aimed directly at Tupac. The way Joe told it, the label got spooked and scrapped the whole thing, supposedly destroying the masters. At first, it sounded just believable enough. Joe and Biggie definitely knew each other. They were both New York heavyweights, moved in similar circles, and had mutual respect. So, fans gave him the benefit of the doubt, until they started comparing this new full album version of the story to Joe's own past statements. Because here's the thing, Joe's story about this project has changed more times than a DJ flips records at a block party. Let's rewind to September 2018, when Fat Joe sat down with Vlad TV. Back then, his version was totally different. He said he and Big had been working on an album, but they only got around to recording 4 songs before it fell apart. He even mentioned Puff Daddy and the Hitmen were involved in producing it. No mention of it being too disrespectful or destroyed. Fast forward to March 2021, when Joe went live with Swizz Beatz and Timbaland during the Versus craze, now the number magically changed again. This time, Joe claimed they had 5 tracks done, not 4, and again, no mention of the Tupac disses or the project being intentionally buried. So by 2023, when the 8 to 10 songs claim popped up out of nowhere, fans couldn't help but notice, the story kept evolving like a freestyle that never ends. And then came the real credibility hit, when Lil Cease, Biggie's right-hand man and a core member of Junior M.A.F.I.A., stepped into the conversation. In December 2021, Cease told Vlad TV exactly how Biggie felt about the East Coast versus West Coast beef, and it completely clashed with Joe's narrative. Cease made it clear, Big hated the idea of feeding into the drama. He had personally told his crew that dissing Tupac was off limits. In fact, Cease said Big told them point blank, if any of you record a diss track, I'm not rocking with you anymore. That was the line. He didn't want to be a pawn in the beef, he wanted to make timeless music, not tabloid headlines. So if Biggie was that firm with his own day ones, why on earth would he turn around and make an entire album of packed disses with Fat Joe? The math just wasn't mathing. Then, in January 2022, Cease doubled down on the art of dialogue, addressing the so-called lost album rumors directly, and what he said put an even bigger dent in Joe's story. Fat Joe's so-called Biggie collab project got shut all the way down when Lil Cease, the man who was practically glued to Biggie's side during that era, spoke up. Cease didn't just poke holes in the story, he ripped it apart from the foundation. He said straight up that during all the years he spent with Big, he never once saw or heard about any actual songs recorded with Fat Joe. According to Cease, yeah, maybe there was some casual barbershop type talk about linking up on something, those kinds of conversations happened all the time in this 90s hip-hop scene. But an album? With multiple tracks? That never existed. Period. And Cease doubled down on something that completely kills the packed diss tape narrative. Biggie wasn't the type to go out of his way to drop full-on diss records. Sure, he might slip in a slick subliminal here and there, that is hip-hop, but a whole tape aimed at Tupac? Not happening. Especially not when the East Coast versus West Coast beef was already spiraling into dangerous territory. Big wanted to cool things down, not throw gasoline on the fire. Now, here's where the mystery deepens. There's been this lingering internet rumor about a lost world star hip-hop clip from years back. Supposedly, in that video, Diddy himself commented on Fat Joe's claim, and flat out denied knowing anything about a Biggie Joe album. The story goes that this clip vanished from the internet, scrubbed clean. Did it ever exist? Nobody knows for sure. But the mere idea has fans buzzing because, let's be real, Diddy's a businessman before anything else. If a full unreleased Biggie project really existed, especially during the posthumous boom when unreleased tracks were making millions, do you think he'd just let it rot in a vault? No way. If anything, he'd have marketed it as a collector's masterpiece, unless, of course, the content was so politically or personally risky that releasing it could backfire. That's the only angle where the Pac diss theory might hold weight. If those tracks were as disrespectful as Joe claims, maybe Diddy buried the project out of respect for Big's legacy, or simply to avoid reopening old wounds in the hip-hop world. But here's the twist: Cuban Link, who's had his own rocky history with Fat Joe, has been very vocal about doubting the album's existence. Cuban's worked with both Joe and Biggie in the past, and while he admits Joe had some relationship with Big, he believes the idea of a whole project is pure exaggeration. Cuban even shared his personal memory of one specific night Joe loves to bring up in this lost album myth. According to Cuban, he, Pun, and Joe once rolled up to Diddy's studio, where they ended up meeting Biggie for the first time. Cuban was a rookie, in awe of being in the room with the legend. After some quick introductions, Diddy explained the concept for a track Biggie wanted to create, a Spanish-flavored intro to give it that Latin gangster spice. Among everyone there, Cuban was the only one truly fluent in Spanish. The catch? He was new, untested, and unsure if he could deliver what Biggie was asking for. But Pun, never one to let his people miss an opportunity, pushed him forward. "You got this," he told him. That track? That's what Joe now claims was part of this mythical Biggie album. But Cuban says it was just a single studio moment, not part of some secret vault of 8 to 10 songs. In his eyes, Joe took one recording session and turned it into an epic, but completely inflated, tale. And that's the real problem with Fat Joe's legendary storytelling. There's always just enough truth to hook you in, but the rest? That's where the lines between memory, myth, and marketing get real blurry. Cuban Link remembers it like it was yesterday. Biggie had a vision, Pun brought the energy, and Cuban brought the Spanish swagger. Together, they laid down that intro exactly how Biggie imagined it. Big was hyped, giving them props for nailing the vibe. Then, after the mood was set, Fat Joe slid in to add his own piece to the track. And here's where the drama starts. Cuban says Joe's been walking around acting like he was the mastermind behind that Spanish intro, the very same one Cuban and Pun created. According to Cuban, Joe's even using that one track as a proof of a mythical full Biggie Fat Joe album that never actually existed. In Cuban's eyes, it has straight up clout chasing, a single collaborative studio session turned into an inflated fairy tale for interviews. But if you think Joe's only been stretching the truth about Biggie and Pac, think again, because he's been stirring up other beefs too. In 2022, Fat Joe jumped into an interview and boldly claimed he was personally responsible for getting Trick Daddy and Pitbull their record deals. Now, in the world of hip-hop history, that's not just a small flex, that's a massive credit to claim. And it didn't take long for one man to shut it down with receipts. Uncle Luke, Miami's hip-hop pioneer and a certified OG, wasted no time lighting up Instagram with his version of the truth. Luke didn't just post a quick, "Nah, that's cap," he gave a full breakdown. "I love Joe, but I find this very interesting. I discovered Trick Daddy. He did his first song with me right after getting out of jail, and he stayed with me. I also discovered and signed Pitbull to my platinum-selling Luke Records label. He did his first songs with me. I felt the importance of signing a Cuban rapper, so I discovered him off battle rap tapes. I've got the receipts. And just because you donned see me at the birthday parties doesn't mean I wasn't there from the start." Luke even reminded everyone of another major credit. He was the one who pulled DJ Khaled from underground radio and pushed him to the mainstream. That's 3 major careers Luke says he actually jump-started. Then, just to add more gasoline to the fire, NFL legend Deion Sanders stepped in with his own comment, "Tell them hero." Sometimes they forget. Luke always been that dude. One of my heroes and still is. Why all have no idea what this man fought for. The music you listen to today exists because of his conviction and willingness to fight for what he believed in. It was a public two-piece combo, Luke hitting Joe with the hard facts, and Dion backing him with legendary respect. With the backlash growing, Fat Joe decided to go live with Uncle Luke to clear the air. But instead of clearing it, the whole thing just made Joe look shaky. On camera, Joe tried to backpedal, claiming he never said he discovered Trick or Pitbull, just that he helped get them signed. But as Joe stumbled through his explanation, Luke sat there looking confused and unconvinced. The body language said it all, Luke wasn't buying what Joe was selling. And neither were the fans. Comments started flooding in, calling Joe's explanation weak, disjointed, and straight damage control. Instead of ending the controversy, that live stream just cemented one thing for a lot of people: Fat Joe might be a great storyteller, but whether his stories are the truth or just entertainment, that's a whole different conversation. Fat Joe says his motives were pure, that he took Trick Daddy's demo out of love for hip-hop. But even Trick himself wasn't buying that version of events. From his perspective, the idea of an East Coast rapper like Fat Joe, in the middle of that era's heavy regional tension, suddenly going out of his way to help a Miami artist land a deal? It just didn't add up. Trick laid it out plainly: there was no Southern artist doing any kind of work or having affiliations with East Coast rappers back then, because we weren't on good terms. So for him to think somebody from the East Coast would go get a brother from the South, let alone Miami, and take his music to get him a deal with no points or strings attached, I don't see that happening. And honestly, that perspective hit hard for a lot of people. The cultural divide at the time was real. Many pointed out that back in the day, East Coast rappers often looked down on Southern artists, treating them as outsiders instead of equals. So the thought of Joe championing Trick's music with no hidden agenda? To a lot of fans, it felt like pure fantasy. Trick even suggested that maybe Joe wasn't intentionally lying, maybe he was just forgetful or straight up hallucinating certain parts of the story. But whether it was confusion or calculated, the result was the same: fans accusing Fat Joe of inserting himself into hip-hop history where he didn't belong. And that's not a small accusation. Because for some, this wasn't just about one story, it was about the bigger picture. Critics say Joe has a pattern of diminishing and overshadowing the contributions of black artists in hip-hop, while inflating his own role in legendary moments. To them, it feels like an ongoing attempt to rewrite history with himself at the center. And if all that wasn't enough controversy, there's the darker cloud that's been following Joe for years: the snitching allegations. Rumors have swirled that he's worked with law enforcement in ways that break the street code. Joe's denied it over and over, but the way he's handled it hasn't helped his case. When he finally addressed the whispers in a video, fans expected hard facts, proof, and a clean explanation. Instead, they got a rambling monologue, vague statements, scattered tangents, and zero concrete evidence to put the rumors to bed. It was the kind of defense that had people saying he made himself look more guilty, not less. And that's the tricky part about Fat Joe. On one hand, he's a respected veteran, a storyteller who can hold a crowd with just his voice. On the other hand, the cracks in those stories keep showing: timelines that don't match, eyewitnesses contradicting him, and industry veterans openly calling him out. At the end of the day, maybe that's why Joe's legacy feels so split. To some, he's the Bronx legend who made it big and kept hip-hop alive with larger-than-life stories. To others, he's the guy who can't resist adding extra seasoning to the truth until it is unrecognizable. And now the question is, in an era where every claim can be fact-checked, every timeline cross-referenced, and every old interview pulled up in seconds, how long can Fat Joe keep playing the hero in his own stories before the rest of the industry stops believing them? Because one thing's for sure, the receipts are out there, and the people who were really there aren't staying quiet anymore.